Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Dave's Faves. And today I want to talk to you about the late Schubert quartets. Now, what do we mean by the late Schubert quartets? We're talking about the last four. They are numbered numbers 12 through 15. And they include 13, subtitled Rosamond, 14, which is Death and the Maiden, and 15, which is 15. Number 12, going back to the beginning, is a single movement that never turned into a full-fledged quartet. It's known as the Quartettensatz, or, in English, the quartet movement, because it's just a movement, a beautiful, wonderful movement. But there you go. Now, I have an impossible choice to make, because all of the great string quartets in the history of humanity that have ever made a record have recorded these works. They are astounding works. I do not need to tell you, I hope, just how super cool late Schubert is. It's a world entirely of its own. It's boundlessly expressive, often transcendentally spacey, really extraordinary music, unbelievably cool music. And they're amazing texturally. I mean, they don't sound like anybody else's quartets. They have wonderful, wonderful moments. I mean, Schubert's ear for sonority and color was extraordinary. And that's particularly amazing when you consider that, we don't know why he wrote any of these things. This was, he wrote these things really in the last 3 years or so of his life. And he just did it. He just had this inward impulse to exude music, and to exude music in every possible medium that he had the opportunity to do before his life ended at the age of 31. And so these are amazing, amazing pieces. They are, like a lot of Schubert's late music, they are great heralds of the nascent Romantic era, because they're just so outwardly expressive and so personal. The essence of Romanticism for a lot of us, in the way that we define it, is that the composer has a personal voice and expresses some inner autobiographical expressive impulse through this personal musical voice. Now, nobody had a more personal musical voice than Beethoven, but Beethoven was also operating within certain, classical formal constraints, which he expanded beyond all recognition, but which still place him within that particular period. Schubert's entire life occurred within the classical period. When he died, it was this year, 1828. I mean, it was within a year of Beethoven's death. And although he was young, when he died, he was a classical composer. But when you listen to his music, his late music particularly, it's very, very difficult, I think, to isolate a year, a period, or a style other than that which Schubert was doing, because the music is so completely unlike anything else. Even though the first movements are all in sonata form, or the finales are rondos, or they're in recognizable styles. They use standard normal formal apparatus. But what they express and the way they come at it and how they handle all of that stuff, it's just so not of a particular time and place, I think, listening to them now. And that's just how I feel about them. And you may agree or disagree, and that's fine. But I think that's what makes them kind of special. They are on the cusp of that incredibly subjective, romantic musical expression. And so, for that reason, by the way, I find it impossible, so difficult, to have just one favorite set of these late quartets or performance. I have dozens of them, and they're all really quite wonderful in their ways, but I've chosen two as my favorites, the ones that I pick depending on my mood. The first is the Quartetto Italiano on Philips or Decca, and these are very different performances. And the second is the Juilliard Quartet on Sony. Now, would you look at the way these labels were just giving away the gold? I mean, this was Odyssey, 2 discs, cost like $2 at one point. I mean, it's the Juilliard Quartet. The performances are stunning, But because it's chamber music, and chamber music doesn't really sell, and they just were giving it away for a song. At some point, it'll probably come out in another big Juilliard box or something. Who knows? And then we've got these, this is a Decca twofer. There was a Quartetto Italiano complete Phillips box, which has since vanished into the ether. I'm hoping these are still available. The reason I have these two is because they're completely different in terms of expression. The Juilliard Quartet, as we all know, was a hyper-precise, extraordinarily, I would say, high-tension group. And so the performances have a springy, somewhat, well, you would call it classical, I suppose. I don't know. But they're very, very highly polished, beautifully precise, extremely rhythmic, somewhat sort of modern-y, post-Stravinsky-an approach to the music, which it works perfectly well in this music. I mean, it's great. The Italiano is the sort of cultured European, if you want to call it that, tradition of quartet playing par excellence. They're warm, they're slightly more relaxed, they're no less rhythmic, they're no less intense than these, but they do emphasize a bit more the music's songfulness and lyricism. These folks emphasize a bit more its dynamism and its rhythmic punch. And so, I can't choose. I don't want to choose. I'm not going to choose. I'm going to enjoy both of these equally, as well as the many other performances of these pieces that I have. But, when I reach to listen for these things just for fun, for my own pleasure, it's usually this one or that one. And I realize these choices date me terribly, don't they? Because, some of you have written and said, what about all the millions of new quartets that have done this music and done it really well? Well, yes, they have. And I don't deny that. But I don't feel that in this particular series, which is about the pieces, the recordings that I've been listening to, because I love them, that I need to worry about those. I mean, much as I might enjoy some of them, and I do. But these are my choices. Juilliard, Italiano, Schubert. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.